Hey, welcome to another episode of Veterans Rant, Rattle, and Roll. I'm Sergeant First Class retired. I can't talk at all because I'm still too tired. David O. Parker, and I'm extremely excited because we have a Lieutenant Colonel retired, Tara Smith, join us. How you doing, Tara?
I'm amazing. How are you?
Well, I can't complain because when I do, Household 6 tells me to shut the hell up.
I get it. I get it. Yeah.
I want to thank you for coming on here. First of all, as I already told you, you're the first officer who's been willing to jump on this show and rant on. So kudos to you. Now, on top of that, you're a female warrior. I mean, come on, this is fun right here.
It is. It's amazing that I made it this far, especially from coming as a lieutenant. Commissioned in 1999, where female officers were treated a lot different than they are now.
That makes sense.
So back then, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. How'd this start for you? You just woke up one day and said, "I want to be saluted."
Well, no, that's still hard for me, to be fair. I'm one of those people who's like, please don't. But no. So I was in college my first year. I've always been interested in the military because I come from a Marine Corps background. Most of my family were Marines, but they all told me that my dad, my brothers who were Marines always said, "No, you're a girl. Marine Corps doesn't want girls." Circa 1995. And so I was in college my first year. I needed a scholarship, and they were offering. And I had the GPA, and I just applied. And, I come from the University of Utah. Utah is not the strongest.
What?
Yeah, Utah.
You're a Ute? You were born in Utah.
Yeah,
Where'd you go to high school?
Kearns High School.
Taylorsville.
No. Kearns.
No, I went to Taylorsville.
Oh, you're my enemy. I'm sorry, we can't be friends.
You little cougar.
I know. You know us. I played soccer there too, so we were trouble.
Well,
we
it's funny. My father, who's a Korean War vet, used to live. From his house, you could look down the hill and see Kearns High's lights on the football field.
Nice. It's a good view. I lived not too far, like a mile from Kearns High School, so we could always see the lights.
Yeah.
And hear the noise when they played games. But
right.
Yeah, I played soccer. We didn't win because we weren't good, but we were rough, so it helped.
What a tiny planet. So yeah. University of Utah up on the hill, and I'm sure as you've heard the red and blue games all the time are annoying to me in Utah because I'm like, neither.
Yes. We used to run the football from University of Utah with the ROTC programs, all the way from University of Utah to BYU every year because it was a big deal. And so we'd take turns. That's probably where my running started, was having to do that. We do 1 mile routes, and my class was 9 people strong. I was the only girl.
Wow, whole 9 people.
Yeah.
That's because everybody else there goes on a mission, right?
They do, but I went to the University of Utah, and you know us, we don't.
What is the old saying about Brigham Young? Never mind. Anyway, so University of Utah. I'm trying to keep this show semi-non.
I'm sorry, I'm not good. No, yeah. So University of Utah got my scholarship. I commissioned in '99. I did branch detail. So I was air defense for the first 2 years, air defense artillery.
Okay.
And once I finished those 2 years, I was taken into the logistics course. So my main branch was actual logistics, but I spent my first 2 years as air defense.
Very interesting. So you commissioned in '99, and then 2000 things go boom, and you didn't jump out.
Yes. I did not. I was focused. So I went to Korea was my first duty station. And so I actually left Korea. We did the beret ceremony, which everybody loved.
Yeah,
I
don't think the word love is the right word for the beret ceremony.
I think I'm being politically correct. It wasn't until my generation got in charge. You notice my generation got in charge, and the beret went bye-bye.
Well, thank you very much for that, by the way.
Well, it wasn't me, but it was other people. I'll take credit, whatever. So 2000, we did the brace ceremony. I went to do my transition course to become a logistics officer, where they just give you manuals and they don't make you read it. Multiple choice test, because why not? And
I always love these phone interviews because I love how the signal comes in and out, and I get to see you frozen on the screen.
Oh, sorry.
Hey, there you are. Welcome back.
You can edit that, right?
Of course. But who says I will?
Ooh, as long as it's a good picture, I don't look crazy.
So
No,
you
yeah.
said
So I did it. Yeah,
you were
go
talking
ahead.
logistics officer, a bunch of books nobody reads, and then I lost you.
Yeah, so the logistics transition officer, which I'm not sure they offer it anymore, but it was actually fairly decent. It was a 3-month course. I went from doing a 9-month air defense artillery course where it's closed book, closed note, word for word, basically quote the regulations. It was college on steroids. It was pretty much awful, but I passed. So there you go. To the logistics course, transition course, was open book, open note, because everyone has the regulations they can always refer to. That was their thing. And 3 months, and I was a logistics officer now.
And that was a what? A captain?
I was a lieutenant, second lieutenant, a first lieutenant. Yeah, I just got promoted to first lieutenant.
Okay.
I got
So
promoted late because I lost all the paperwork again. Because that's my career.
they don't. Nobody on the show knows what you're talking about, but we'll get to that, I'm sure.
Yeah, they lost my paperwork to make first lieutenant, so I got promoted late. So, but
well,
so
all it is
yeah.
is a Sharpie coloring it in anyway, right?
Yeah, because you don't really need to do anything but breathe. But I probably shouldn't say that out loud.
So when
At
you
the
made
time,
captain, did you command a company? Uh-oh.
I actually commanded a company as first lieutenant.
You
First
commanded a
lieutenant,
company as a first
commander.
lieutenant.
What I did, it's one of the last companies that they let you do that, which I do not recommend to anybody. There's
Where
a
was that
reason I
at?
quit. Fort Lewis, Washington. I was a CMMC, if anybody remembers what that is, Corps Artillery Management Center, which is like a division level, a sustainment brigade at this point, I think is what it is. Not a
So they couldn't
CSSB, which
find a
is
captain, or you were just that good of a lieutenant?
no, that's what it was. It was by MTO. It was a first lieutenant that did it.
Wow.
And I came fresh out of the transition course as an air defense officer to do this because my branch officer loved me, as she
Well,
put
there you
it.
go. So tell us,
So,
you went Korea, then you went to Fort Lewis, Washington, then where?
then I went to Fort Drum, New York. Oh, I had the captain's career course where you get your first lobotomy, and then went to Fort Drum, New York.
Your first lobotomy. How many did you get, Tara?
Yeah, at least 2.
Okay.
At least 2.
So you were
because as a
climbing
major,
glory.
you get your last one. Yeah, I was climbing to glory. I did that for 3.5 years. Actually, it was probably one of my best experiences.
When were you there?
One of my, I was there from 2004 to 2008.
So I guarantee you and I passed each other running on River Ridge Loop.
Yes, one of my favorite run routes. That's where I learned to run.
I was in 431.
Because I run. Really? I was at the Sustainment Brigade. I was their HHC commander.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. Yeah.
Well, all right.
Yeah. Cheers.
So
it was fun. I did.
You did what? Come on.
I did. I was a rear D battalion commander. They lost confidence in the first guy that was selected. So 2 weeks before we deployed to Afghanistan, the battalion commander came to me and says, I don't trust. Basically said, I don't trust the guy I'm leaving behind. I want you to do it. And I accepted because I had a child that was a year and a half old. What female officer gets the opportunity to not deploy as a year and a half old child is not going to be like, oh, okay. But
I don't think that one's gender specific.
It might not be, but as a girl, I know what I felt.
Right, sure. So
yeah,
year
so my
and a
daughter,
half-year-old, I might have stayed home too if I had the shot.
But. Yeah, she gave me the choice. She's like, you can come or you go. I give you the choice. And he was probably one of my favorite commanders because he actually was the first commander I've ever had that treated me as an equal to the male officers that were there. Because at the time, it's not as sharp oriented as it is now. Where
right
now maybe people are a little too scared. But at the time, okay, a lot. I've had to have a few decent conversations with people to calm the hell down. But the time, people didn't care. They actually treated me worse because I was a girl and I was too soft, which is why I learned to run like I learned to run. Because then I don't know how bad it. Well, now as a lieutenant colonel, I don't know how bad it is because I'm a lieutenant colonel. No one cares what I do. But, well, they do, but they don't say it to my face. But then as a captain, if you didn't run and you didn't do PT and you couldn't outperform everyone else, you were worthless. So as a commander, I did my first run, and you know what happened?
What?
I had first classes. I could hear it, and they're dumb because they made me hear it. She's a girl. She's little. She can't run. You know, don't worry about it. She's not going to be as bad as the last captain who ran us to the ground. And they didn't know
you
me.
ran them in the
They
ground.
didn't know
you?
that. Yeah, I scored 100%, even though female. People can argue female, you know, stuff all the time. But I was, you know, 15-minute 2-mile runner, 15:30, 14:30,
Awesome.
depending on the elevation. Right? So I took them on a 4-mile run at my pace because they were telling me that I couldn't run. And my first sergeant, when he heard it, like we were stretching and doing all that, and I told him before we left, I'm like, I just want to do a cohesive run, make everybody feel good about themselves, build esprit de corps, not burn anyone to the ground. And he came up to me, he's like, ma'am, you hear that? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, are you going to take it? I'm like, I really wanted to be nice. I really, really wanted to be nice, but I couldn't. So I took him on my pace, 8:50. Who can't do that for 4 miles? By the time I was done, it was a company that, because I was an HHC, so it's really hard to get everyone out at the time, especially sustainment brigades.
Oh,
I had about 50 people there, HHC, sustainment brigade. By the time I was done, 11 people were with me.
Wow. Good job.
And my lieutenant, my lieutenant was barely hanging on. And then the next run, I told them everyone before they got, we're going to do an 8-mile run, so be prepared. Like, I'm trying to mentally prepare them because I don't want to surprise anybody. So then I hear again, oh, she could never possibly keep the same pace she did for that last run for an 8-mile run. And I'm like, I got my clock. I'm like, okay. So I did the last run, same pace the entire time. We had like 5 people left. My lieutenant was not hanging on, but I'm not gonna get mad. I just took him aside and said, "You're a man, really."
Well, there you
And then
go.
he tells me, he's like, "Ma'am, I don't know what the point of that is." And I'm like, "The point of it is I'm a girl and I can outrun any of you, so don't talk shit about me." And so after that, like I have NCOs come up to me and they're like, "Ma'am, because you know we're captains. I have a lot of captain friends I've met before I came that were still in my unit, and they're like, ma'am, the other captains warned us not to ever run with you." And I'm like, I know, but then you started talking shit. I was going to be nice. And you can't talk shit in front of your company commander regardless of their gender and not expect them to burn you to the ground. And so after that, I never did that. I always put my clock to a 9-minute mile pace. So, you know, they had to keep up. We did a lot of release runs too because no one wanted to run with me.
So you never got mad, took your NCOs out and just smoked them for it, huh?
I didn't. But my first sergeant was kind of a dick, so he did it for me. So we did the good cop, bad cop thing. Yeah, he was a complete asshole. I'm not even sure I liked him, but he was really, really good at good cop, bad cop because it was a sustainment brigade. There's, you know how many?
Yes.
How many sergeant majors are in a sustainment brigade? There's
all of them.
And I don't know. Yes, and they would play phone tag. They would get pissed at first sergeant and call him, and we had offices across from each other, and I would hear, "Yes, Sergeant Major," "No, Sergeant Major," and he'd hang up. "Ma'am, they're calling you," and I would be like, "Yeah, maybe I can work that out, but I got to talk to first sergeant first. I'm not really up on the issue." I knew everything.
Good
and
job.
then they would hang up on me. "Ma'am, I don't understand." And then they would call him back and chew him out, and then they'd call me back, and I'm like, "Oh, I just talked to first sergeant." "No." And then they would be really, really pissed and hang up on me. But I had an amazing battalion commander that said, no matter what the captain tells you, regardless of your rank, as long as it doesn't violate, you know, the normal regulations, USMC, whatever, that's what we're going to do.
Awesome.
So
you had 2 commands. One as a captain and one as a lieutenant?
Yes, 2 commands. One was both HHCs, which I do not bless on anybody. It's just, it's hard. You have to be very people friendly.
Yes, I remember sitting in the chair of the HHT.
Yeah. Ooh.
I'm like, I think everybody in this triple alpha outranks me.
And you have to act like you're supposed to be there. Like when I was lieutenant a first lieutenant. Right before I made captain and went to Fort Drum, I was actually assigned to an MI unit as the assistant S4, but nobody liked the S4. He was great. He's kind of dumb, and so super nice, great personality. But the Brigade XO,
great personality. We all know that's like a
no.
hey, I want to introduce you to this person. They have a really nice personality.
Really great personality. Gets along with everybody. Doesn't do shit. But and so the Brigade XO loved me. Like the captain you saw was like, I don't know how come I could be in the same room as you and you could say something and they just do it, and I say something and they tell me no, and I'm like, no idea, because I could quote regulations. Because I learned as a air defense officer, if you don't know the regulation, you can't tell them what paragraph it's in, then you don't know shit, right? And so that's what I learned. So I got sent as a first lieutenant to a meeting with the CG, representing the MI brigade. I am the assistant S4. There is so many other MI officers involved in that. I don't even know how I ended up being there. But the point of the matter is the Brigade XO is like, no, you're the only one I trust. And I'm like, really, sir? And all he told me is like, don't say anything. Go take notes. That's all we need you to do. The brigade commander just can't make it. And I'm like, okay. So I'm sitting in there with the CG, and I'm just doing my thing. I'm like, don't.
Was that General Austin?
No, it was General Shiseki, I think, or whoever it is, some Asian dude, whatever.
Right.
But,
after
is
Austin,
that wrong?
right?
Yeah, the dude after Austin. So it was 2002, 2003.
I swore it was Austin.
And so
anyway, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It was right before
you were in the meeting. You would know.
I don't know what year. I was in probably about 2003, 2004 because I left right after that to do my first lobotomy. But so I was in there and I'm in there taking notes for the MI brigade, and the general asked me a question, and I'm like, I don't know, sir. I'm not really privy on that information. He looks at me. He's like, why are you here? And I'm like, to take notes. He's like, so you have no decision authority. I'm like, sir, I'm a logistics officer, not MI. I was told to take copious notes in order to inform everyone what's going on, and they will get back to you. And he just busts out laughing. He's like, really? You're representing the MI brigade? There was no one else there. And I'm like, obviously not. I'm the best officer because I'm dumb. And what happened was he was eating grapes, and he takes these handful of grapes and he just throws them at me. And I was just like, oh my God, the general just threw grapes at me. Who does that? Like nowadays, if you throw grapes at someone else, you're dead to the world. But I just laughed. I'm like, yep, notes. He just laughed.
Did you put that in your
notes? I got back to my unit. And I told, yeah, 14, I did.
12,
I went back to my unit.
Grapes.
Yeah, and I told my unit, he's like, oh, he likes you. He threw grapes at you. I'm like, that's a thing? He's like, yeah, totally a thing.
Like, it's okay, you left drum, and then where'd you go?
I went to, actually, I was getting out of the Army.
What?
The first time I was getting out of the Army. So I almost out of the Army a number of times. But so I dropped my paperwork. I was pregnant with my second kid, was going to get out of the Army, was on terminal leave, decided I hated my husband, and I didn't want to be stuck in Utah with the dude I hated. So I told him, I'm like, look, I want to go back in.
Don't hold back. Tell us how you feel.
You know how honest I am. So I called branch. I'm like, I'm on terminal leave. I'm like, hey, it was right when they were giving everyone incentives to stay in. They were super easy about it. I'm like, I don't want to get out. I talked to my soon-to-be ex-husband. He didn't know. Hey, I want to go back in. I just don't feel comfortable getting out right now. I think I could offer a lot more to the military. And so they took me back. No break in service. And long story short, we were divorced within a year, but meant to be.
Sure.
So,
and then where'd you go?
Yeah, that was my first. Fort Carson. So Fort Carson, I was assigned to which unit? So many units. Second Brigade. No, yeah, old Second Brigade. Fourth Brigade. I was assigned to 4th Brigade Infantry, and so I was a SPO officer.
Of course you were.
Yeah, 4th Brigade. So I was the SPO officer, assistant SPO officer, but they didn't have enough officers, so I did everything. And that was fun. We were there. I was there, and then they were going to leave me on RD again. I got hurt. I fell in the field and just totally threw my back out of it. I couldn't even tie my shoelaces. And so I was in 2nd Brigade. They left me behind for deployment. I got better about halfway through deployment. They still wouldn't deploy me, and I just didn't want to be the rear D executive officer because I was going to have to kill people. And so I got a YS tasker. It's a thing in my head.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually threatened at one point to throw my computer out the window because S6 wouldn't come fix it.
I always wonder what a unit would look like if we could have done promotion by attrition.
It would probably be a lot better. When I was a lieutenant, I used to have soldiers who come up to me and tell me which officers they wanted to kill and have to tell them they can't. So I think my soldiers like me, and I would be like, bad things happen when you kill officers. And they would tell me, no, only if we go to war. Only if we go to war, ma'am, because no one knows what happens. And I'm like, I don't think that's a thing. So, but yeah, we had some really bad leadership back then. But anyway, so I got a YS tasker out of that to be the USFI J4 basing chief. So that was when we were all pulling out of Iraq, and we had to close all those bases down. And my job was to do property and decide where it went from Iraq, whether it be Kuwait, Afghanistan, the United States, anywhere. So I did all that. It was really, really intense because you had to follow all the regulations. I actually had to talk to Congress, which was super bizarre because I didn't like them. And so I did that for a while. It was just, I don't like that. I was really, really good at regulations at the time because my degree is in procurement, acquisitions, and government contracting. So I know all those regulations, which worked out well. So I did that for a while. It was, one of those where you only get 4 hours of sleep a day. If you're lucky, you have to decide between eating and sleeping. So usually I decided to sleep. Right. So my captains really got angry at because I was always hangry, and they started leaving little gifts at my desk. So Major Smith would not be pissy and bite their heads off. Hey, Mom, you hungry? I'm like, no, I'm good. They're like, no, you're hungry. And they would just slide me food.
Somebody feed the damn major.
Yeah, it was like that. And I had this major who I actually had to be pulled away from, beaten the shit out of by 2 other majors who were like, we want to kill him, but you can't do it. So we were, at the time I was having a struggle because I was a basing chief, and the 2 basing chiefs before me were majors, but it's a lieutenant colonel slot. They were both male, and I was the first female to take the job. And I know this because one of my good friends had done the job before, and he gave me all the background. And so as soon as I got there and took charge of it, one of the other lieutenant colonels there decided that I could not possibly run the section on my own, and I needed a lieutenant colonel to provide top cover. So I spent like a month trying to prove that I didn't need someone else as a major in a lieutenant colonel slot. I didn't need another lieutenant colonel to tell me how to do it. And so it all came down to one meeting when I was with colonel and the 2-star, deciding whether or not I couldn't handle that section. And I looked at all of them and I'm like, okay, so what you're telling me as a female who every other person major in the last 2 positions were male, now that a female comes in, I cannot possibly handle this job, even though my degrees and my experience is far exceeding theirs. And so what you're basically telling me I'm a girl and I can't possibly do it. And you would be surprised how fast people back up really fast from that position. So within me saying that, probably within a minute, they're like, no, you're good. You're fine. And I spent a month. It took me pulling the women card and saying that's and that's how I felt. Because at the time, it was right when that transition was where you could do that, because I was always stepped on as a girl. There's a definite glass ceiling at the time. Now it's being lifted and it's better, not as good as it should be. But at the time, you knew where you're going to be. Lieutenant colonel as a female officer was amazing. Colonel as a female officer was a dream. regardless. Now it's different. It's completely different. But back then, that's how it was. And so, needless to say, so that went past. They left me alone. The lieutenant colonel was there to support me if I needed him, but I had
Which
my own.
I'm guessing
Yeah.
by how energetic you are, you never needed him.
I didn't. I did once because this one complete asshole decided I could not possibly tell him how to do it. And this guy was the one good thing about this guy was he knew how to dress someone down and just to make them feel like a piece of shit. And so I'm like, only one
That is a
time,
learned skill.
It is, and I couldn't do it. I'm better at it now, but back then I wasn't as good. And so I said, "Sir," and he was a Navy commander, a major, but
Yes.
they act like they're not. They act like they're important, far exceeding Army major. And so I'm like, "Sir, I have a commander on the phone that refuses to listen to me, and I'm like telling these are the regulations. Like, I do not want to be in front of Congress testifying how this major, a commander in the Navy, refuses to listen to me on what property can be distributed to the Iraqis. Like, that is like go to jail card right there. Like, you gave him the wrong property, you're in jail." So,
Right.
that's the only time I used him. I'm like, "Sir, can you yell at him for me?" And he's like, "My pleasure." And just dressed him down. That was the only time. But after that, he really, really supported me. So it went from a confrontational to Tara, I get you. So it turned out really well. But I tell that story to say that his, I guess the dude that was right at subordinate, but his, like, whatever he was, no one knew what he did. But basically, he just repeated the colonel's orders and just didn't do shit. I was in the middle of a meeting. Yeah, he was a dick. I was in the middle of a meeting.
Johnny gives an order.
Right. You don't know what you're doing. The colonel said this. And I would always tell him, like, the colonel's not my boss. I don't give two shits. And so I'm in the middle of a meeting, and he sits in on it, which is good because our branches did a lot of things that were very similar. And so we needed to know what each other were doing. So he sits in the meeting for his colonel. And I'm in the middle of doing this meeting with all these J-Force, colonels or lieutenant colonels of different divisions.
Okay.
G-Force, yeah. G-Force. Different divisions. 3 of them, at least. And I'm starting my meeting. And he goes in and he cuts me off and he starts the meeting and starts telling people what they need to do. And he is so off base. It's my meeting. He's telling them the wrong information. He's going to send us all to jail. And so I interrupt and I'm like, "Listen, the last time I checked, I was the basing and disposition chief, and you are a fly on the wall and don't know shit. So I'd appreciate it if you shut the fuck up right now and let me run my meeting." Because you know how I am. I'm like that. I've had 3 hours of sleep. One of the guys on the line, I'm hangry. One of the guys on the line, one of the colonels on the line is actually my boss at Fort Carson, so he knows me, so I'm super comfortable, right?
Yeah.
He's an amazing, he will always back me up. And it's silence. It's VTC. It's silence. Tara's angry face. This dude is like sputtering, and he's like, "We'll talk afterwards, Nate." And I run my meeting. Afterwards, he comes up to me and he says, "I don't know what you're doing." My boss said, I'm like, "Look, your boss isn't in charge of me." And you know what he said? He said, "At ease, Major." And he's yeah, he's a major. And I don't know what I said after that. All I know is I was poking him in his rank and saying, "Last time I checked, we're both fucking majors." And I was ripped apart from him by 2 of my good buddies, other majors, dragged away, and just the look on his face is astonishment. And I get back up to the JOC because we were in the JOC. That's where our offices were. And I'm kind of in the corner. He comes up and he starts, "I need to still talk to you." And he's trapped me. So A, I'm pissed. B, I'm a girl. And C, I'm angry. And you don't fuck with women that are super pissed off regardless. Like, I might be sexist, but you know how we get, right? Yeah. And all I know is, like, one dude was pushing against my stomach. The other dude was dragging him off like, don't trap her. She will kick the shit out of you. And so, long story short, we had to go in front of the boss and explain ourselves. He got a counseling. I didn't. All I was told was I need to be able to better handle myself. And the guys that were pulling me off.
It was a leadership challenge, Tara.
Yeah, it was. The guys that pulled me off were like, "Oh my God, I have never heard anyone talk to anybody like that." It was like you ripped him apart, like exposed all his bones to the vultures, and he just laid there you know, and I'm like, really? I don't even know what I said. And when I went to, I don't remember. To this day, I have no clue. But one of the guys that that was with me there went to ILE with me, you know, the majors lobotomy course, and he was there with me, and he spread that story everywhere, and he still won't tell me what I said, but I would go around places and they'd be like, "That's her," and I'm like, and I go down like, "What the fuck did you say?" She's like, I just told him not to make you mad." So I'm like, well, I guess it's okay. But yeah, so it's just the one thing about being a female officer is now it's a little different. But when I was growing up, if you didn't learn how to project yourself, if you didn't learn how to speak, because I was raised to respect people, not interrupt, not like, so guys would start talking, and if I was already talking, I'd just stop. So now I've learned that I just keep talking because no one's ever going to listen to me unless I keep talking. So there's a lot of things you learn as a female officer to project yourself, because you're either a pushover or you're a bitch, and it's far rather to be a bitch than a pushover. So you gotta learn your strengths. So, but
All right, so we've made it
and you
through
also
major.
gotta,
Tell us about
yeah,
Lieutenant Colonel interesting things.
oh goodness, Lieutenant Colonel was I was already retiring, so I got when I got Lieutenant Colonel, I had a year left in the Army. So I was already retiring. I made Lieutenant Colonel, and I'm like, you know, I'm retiring. You don't need to give me anything. So I got put into G4 in Colorado. So I stayed in Colorado for a lot longer than most people would because my son's EFMP.
Yeah.
And so I got I was in Colorado from Fort Drum. Then I went to ILE. Then I came back to Colorado because I finagled my way and had connections, and they liked me. I deployed Kuwait, came back and to Colorado, and then my son was having a lot of problems, so I put my EFMB packet in and I stabilized. So all intents and purposes, for all the times I've been back and going back and forth, I've probably been in Colorado for 10 years. So I'm like one of the few lieutenant colonels that have been able to homestead and completely ruin the career and not make it past lieutenant colonel, which is fine for me. But so by the time I got lieutenant colonel, I had like a year and a half left. So they sent me to G4, and I was just the planner there and operations.
They didn't make you the DTO?
No, I'm a supply officer. I do have the qualification. I've taken the DTO course. I'm one of the few quartermaster officers that is completely DTO qualified, which is why I knew what you're talking about whenever you talk to me. So, yeah, that's why you tell me stuff. I'm like, I totally believe you. I know what you're talking about. Like the railroad stuff we did, I'm like, yeah, you're right. This is bullshit. We're gonna go talk to people. So, but you know me, I've always stuck up for my NCOs and my warrant officers, because if they're going to come and tell me that there's a problem, because they don't want to come talk to me. They want to avoid me. They don't want me in business because I am going to screw it up completely. So that's just the way I was. And
well, at least you know your superhero strength right there, don't you?
You know, my first job as a major, when I was at the G4, because I've been at the G4 3 times. I was at the G4. I first got major, and I got really angry at captain. He was a company commander. I was trying to PCS to ILE, and he was holding my orders hostage, and I got pissed.
What?
Like, yeah, like I had to like do this packet. So what happened when we were going to ILE? Branch ended up delaying all the officers' orders to the point where we only had 30 days to clear. Like we all got our orders at once. We all had 30 days to clear, and the commander decided I needed to go through a week-long process to get my orders from him, because that's the way his SOP said. And I got pissed. Like, you know me, I don't like. I act angry now, but I'm actually fairly level-headed. I don't get as angry as I normally, like most people do. I usually just let other people handle my anger because it's easier to listen to them, and it's quite amusing. But I got angry, and so I'm on the phone just yelling at this captain. And I have my sergeant major, because I was a supply and services branch chief, and then the maintenance guys like right across the table for me, the maintenance sergeant major, and I'm yelling at this captain like I'm pissed, and I slam the phone down. Like I wasn't
There's
so
a lot
pissed
of
I'd throw a
phone
stapler,
slamming in your career, ma'am.
There's phones. So there's two levels of my anger: phone slamming and stapler throwing. I wasn't at stapler throwing. I was at and I look before I throw it. I'm not gonna like completely hit somebody. There's rules, but So my sergeant major, and he was a Sergeant Major Smith too, so we were quite the team. I called him my cousin. He's like, man, what's going on? And I explained it to him. He's like, I got it. And then the maintenance sergeant major comes over and they talk and then they leave. And like 45 minutes later, they came in and they handed me my orders. I'm like, what the fuck? And they're like, no, the captain had a change of heart. We went down and talked to him. And I'm like, and I had been a major maybe 3 months. And I'm like, I looked at him and I'm like, I promise to use my powers only for good. I'm so sorry you wouldn't do that.
The captain had a change of heart when the 2-star majors went and seen him.
Right. And one of the first classes came to me later. She's like, no, ma'am, they totally locked him up and chewed him out for a good 15 minutes. And,
wow.
And I'm like, really? I'm like, yes, powers for good. So, no, it was interesting. I wasn't the only person that was having that problem, but I was the only person. Afterwards, I took them to lunch and I thanked them. And they're like, no, ma'am, like you do get mad and you do stupid shit, but you only get mad when it's legitimate. And that was the first time they'd actually seen me like completely lose it. And so I'm like, well, okay, thank you. I felt really bad. I was kind of embarrassed because I'm like, I probably should have more professionalism than that, but
right, because that was obviously a strength of yours, always professional and straight down the road. So usually I move on from rattling sword to rant, but I can't really tell the difference right now with you.
No, I'm a little bit of both. My career's been up and down, and I kind of combine it because the only reason I've stayed in the Army as long as I have is because I try to find the humor in everything that's going on around me. You know, I've had so many toxic leaders and a few good leaders, but coming from when I did at the time, I think there was a purge in the Army of that toxic leadership, and so now we're getting better. I'm not saying we're 100%, but we're getting better. And we're getting better at leaders who explain and who don't need absolute compliance without demanding that their subordinates respect them. Because before it wasn't so much about respect, but doing. And so now it's about earning respect and being able to communicate that respect. But I've had so many just fun, interesting things as like an officer, you know, being deployed to Kuwait, you know, and doing that fun stuff. I was a blast chief. Brigade logistics team chief, who is, you know, wholesale logistics, not part of a brigade, but I deployed with 2nd Brigade at 4ID. And just watching those guys and watching people struggle and then knowing the shortfalls and knowing that my job was really from like 9 to noon. I didn't do shit. Like blast chiefs, really, if they're doing their job and they have a good person with them, they have no job. So I just remember going to the S4 shop at 2nd Brigade and watching and seeing and talking to the captains and making them laugh because they're so intense and their boss at the time didn't always give that personal touch that they needed. And so my whole thing was to go in a room and talk to people and make them feel good about themselves and making them feel part of a team. And then because if I make them feel part of a team, then they're going to want to help me. And as a blast chief, the only reason you can do your job is because they want you to do your job. They could have shut me out and said I got to do everything myself, and I could have went to the gym like 24 hours a day. So I've learned a lot of people skills, and Brigade was probably Sustainment Brigade at Fort Drum was like my 2 favorite units because you guys at 2nd Brigade, you played hard, you worked hard, but you made everyone part of a team and a family, and even if they weren't, you made sure that they didn't feel like it. So it was just fun, and I've like I said, I had 2 times I was going to get out of the Army. The first time was when I was a captain. The second time was when I was a major, and both times I pulled the paperwork out because they PCS'd me to a unit I liked. I was always, so I've had, it's just weird. So it's like the Army knows, like she's going to get out. Let's send them to a cool unit with people she likes and wants to work for. And then as soon as she's there and in again, okay, let's send her to a shitty unit where everybody sucks. You know? And so I don't know if a lot of officers talk to you guys about that, but it's the same for us. You know, you're expected to be somewhere for 2 to 3 years, and then you're expected to PCS again. And your family gets jerked around. And I'm a single parent. Like, I'm a single parent, which is why I was able to stay at Fort Carson as long as I am. And my kids, I have 2 kids with IEPs. You know, 2 kids who are significantly emotionally hurt because of my deployments and my inability to be there for them.
Right.
But then at the same time, you got to be there to make them laugh, to make everyone laugh around you, and to know that when that NCO or your kid comes to you, you can take their pain or their problems and you can make it work. And that was my job as an officer. My whole job was not to be in charge so much as to make the plan work and to make sure that everyone around me knew what I was doing and I knew the way forward. And if I didn't do that, then shit would fall apart. I'm not a micromanager. So, and I like to have fun, because you're not going to be in the Army for 20 years without finding the fun, or you're kind of a dick and you don't care either way.
Well, you've had me rolling a lot, but let's move on to roll. You already rantled and rant all together. There's got to be some funny stuff that happened, other than making all your NCOs fall out of a run because they talk shit.
Well, you got to do that. I don't know. I think it's also combined in my head.
Well, I got to admit, your story was funny. You did all three at the same time. Imagine that. Multitasking Lieutenant Colonel.
That's my job. I do that. I don't know, personal things. I think if you look at lieutenant colonels, you never hear about their personal side, because we're people, right? We do
last I knew.
Shit. Yeah, no, don't tell anybody I said that.
Okay. Now I won't tell anybody who doesn't watch this video on YouTube right after they click subscribe because of talking to you.
So listen, I'm in uniform. I'm hitting the gas station, right?
Yeah.
Uniform. I'm a major at the time, actually major promotable, so lieutenant colonel, whatever. And so I'm filling out my gas station, my Jeep. I'm filling out my Jeep. I run into somebody I know, the bane to my kids' existence, because I tend to know everyone. And I start talking to them, and I'm like done talking to them. I'm done filling up. I drive off. The pump is still in my Jeep.
No.
I drive off. Good thing there's a fucking quick disconnect. Who knew? Who knew that if you drive off with the pump still in your Jeep, the shit just shuts off? And what do? You stop. I'm in uniform. I'm respectful. I'm supposed to be a professional. I get out and I'm like, what the fuck do I do with this? It's disconnected. It's just hanging off of my Jeep. Every pump is pretty much full, and it's not on post, but still I get someone, good job, Major. I saw that. And I'm like, nothing to see here. It's all good. I have this. And I'm like, nothing to see here. Thank you.
So did you at least take the broken gas handle out of your Jeep and put it somewhere?
I did. And I held it, and I look at the guy. I'm like, what do I do with this? And he's just laughing, and he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, I wind it like normal people just dump it on the ground, but I'm responsible. I know what you do with hoses. You not just dump them on the ground. You wind them up, and you place them respectfully in front of the pump. Because I'm like, do I go inside? Do I admit to this? There's cameras. What do I do? Right? I don't know.
Right. What do you do?
Like, you wind it up as quick as you can, and you hide as best you can, because I owned it though. The dude that said, "Hey, Major," I'm like, "Yeah, I'll be here all day." Like, I get it. Like, no, like, take a picture. You want a picture? And so, and I just drove off. Like, I am so. So lieutenant colonels, they just fuck up all the time. That's me. It's just, and what are you gonna do? Probably the most embarrassing point there, and he was like, "Hey, Major," I'm like, yeah, and I'm waving at the crowd. So we do things. We do fun things. I think my best story is when I learned that the worst word you could possibly say in logistics, one of the worst, is contaminated. The moment I had to ban anyone in my section to say the word contaminated. So I'm the SPO for the CSSB, the Combat Support Brigade, whatever.
Yep.
Brigade. And we're in the field. We're supporting a unit, and some person, I'm dropping off the hippos for the water, right? Drops it off to the customer and says, and they're the customer saying, they have the flu or something going around them. They're like, well, we're kind of sick. They're just talking offhand to this lieutenant and the sergeant. And the lieutenant says, well, maybe the water's contaminated.
Uh-oh.
Next thing I know, yes. And so I'm like getting phone calls from battalion commanders. I'm like, sir, sir, it's not contaminated. They're just, the lieutenant just not being very smart. And I'm just like, I'm like,
Wait,
I had a
the
college meeting,
lieutenant
a
not
college
being
meeting.
smart. Are there smart lieutenants?
Well, that's so rare. It's so rare, right? They graduated from West Point. They know English as a second language. They're good.
All right.
And so it's like, home, and I'm like, I make a speech. I'm like, contamination. And I like explain what it is. And I'm like, I'm making jokes. Like, one of my NCOs, he's like, Tara, that's just, I'm like, I don't know. You had to pull out like receipts and shit. I'm like, you cannot say that word. You can't, and this is what contamination is. And the lieutenant's like, man, well, people were sick.
Wow.
I'm like, that's like saying the F word one too many times. Like, there's a place for it, and then there's not. And so,
at least according to Patton.
well, I love Patton though. He was kind of a dick, but he did his thing. So, yeah, too bad the car wreck ruined everything. But
I know, right?
So yeah, but no. So I have more probably personal funny stories than I do Army stories, just because I intermix them so much, because it kept me going. Like,
Yeah.
it became a running joke as a SPO. My lieutenants that were actually in the shop with me would just come up and just like write letters out about things being contaminated. I was like, oh my god. And I think I lost my shit. I actually was so mad that I couldn't speak. And
wow,
so my
that'd be something to see. Next time that happens, can you call me so I can watch? FaceTime me or something.
So
I mean, I
was
want to see that.
stuttering. Like, but really what I was thinking was words that I wanted to say, and then knowing I can't say that, like, they were just not like EEO compliant or not not sharp compliant. And so, like, I would say something, I'm like, can't say that. And so my chief warrant officer like stopped me. He's like, are you gonna speak English today? And I'm like, I don't know, chief, I don't know what to say.
Wow.
I'm like, I have no idea, this is so bad. And so from then on, every time I would start getting angry, he would do an impression of me, of that time when I couldn't speak English, and it just went through the office like wildfire. And so I'd go to a meeting when they would see me starting to get mad.
Yeah.
And they would just start making like, this is Major Smith. Can't talk. And I'm like, yeah. Right. And I think at some point I said, you do that again, I'm gonna spray you with water.
Ooh, spray you with water.
That's what I said.
You're dangerous.
Right. Because everything else I wanted to do was not okay.
Understood.
So, like, and yeah, so and so that, yeah, chief, I love him. He was a maintenance chief, which I love. My warrant officers are the ones that raised me as a lieutenant, like, through the Army, through the Air Defense Artillery. My first couple years in logistics, the warrant officers are the ones that took care of me, which is probably why I kind of have an irreverent attitude, and I'm not quite.
Nah, I can't believe that the warrant officers rubbed off on you that much.
No, they just used to tell me, why does it matter? Like, what does it matter? They think, are you gonna do the job? Are you gonna are you doing it, in compliance? Are you exceeding it? And why censor your words if it's right? And I'm like, oh, okay. And because I started out as a very bashful girl from Utah, where you're raised very politically correct to and although my mom was in a very male-dominated field, she's my hero because of what she did, and she's the one that enabled me to be more of an A-type personality, I still needed a lot of training. And I just, God bless the warrant officers and the NCOs, because I would have been out there flapping, doing God knows what. So
awesome. Hey, we talked before we got on here together about Stop 22 and how both of us have been affected by this challenge over the last couple of years. If you could say something to those folks that are finding themselves in a dark, bad place, what would you say, Tara? What would your message be?
Reach out. Talk to people. I know that the Army preaches it's okay to tell your counselors, it's okay to go to the doctors, and I know at the same time the Army preaches if you do that, you ruin your career. Whether you're still in or whether you're out, there are actually officers who love you. It doesn't have to be your NCO. It doesn't have to be your warrant officer. It doesn't have to be your best friend. I had a guy that was really close to me when I was my second company command at Fort Drum. He was one of my maintenance techs, and not techs, but NCOs. And he struggled. He struggled. He went to Afghanistan. Afghanistan at the time was a rough mission.
Yeah.
Because as a logistics unit, we actually provided combat support. We guarded convoys. We did a lot of things logistics personnel are not trained to do.
Right.
Deaths were involved. And he struggled. It's not his job. It wasn't his job as a maintenance guy to go out and guard a convoy. And he struggled. And I remember the day I got the email from Maniacs from Fort Drum, my unit. They're probably the strongest squad that was in my unit. And I'm an honorary member because only NCOs can be members, but they added to me, so God bless them. But I got the message that he had passed away. And it affected numerous members in that group. And I had to take a moment. My colonel came in and I was the executive officer, and he's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I can't do this. I can't do this," because this soldier had made such an impact on me. More than one outlet. That there are officers out there that won't judge. You can help you. We're a text away. We're a phone call away. There are people out there that will jump on a plane, in their car, on a train to be there. I've seen it. I've on mission, off mission, different state. I've seen supply guy. I've seen every rank as a lieutenant colonel in all the missions I've been on. Stop. Because that's what we do. We stop. The moment there is someone in distress, we stop, because there's nothing more important than life. And I just need people to know that we all understand. We all know the struggle. And there's people out there, there's lieutenants, there's captains, there's colonels that have the same struggle every day. And we are told we are not allowed to feel those feelings because our careers will end. But you have to find that person you connect with, or that person that's out there. Because the good thing about TRICARE is you don't need a referral. You don't have to go on post. You can go in the civilian infrastructure, talk to someone that's not even in the Army. It doesn't go on record. I've been there. I've been to the point where I said, I need to call somebody, and it can't go in my record. And it's saved me. It's saved other people. So the hardest thing to admit is that you need help. And I just hope that people will do it.
You know, I can't tell you thanks enough for getting that raw. I can see the emotion in your face. We can all hear it in your voice. It's painful. That's why we want to stop this 22. You know, I got in a dark place more than one time, and I always thought of it as I can't hurt other people that way, so I got to keep on pushing through. So yeah, I hope that your story reaches somebody. I'm sure it will. Yeah. Say again?
So. I hope so. I mean, my focus is always like, you find the one thing, and that's what, most people tell you, is you find the one thing to make it stop. And it doesn't stop the pain, it doesn't stop the struggle, but it stops the action. We all want to escape, and there's it's a lifetime. It's like having a kid. It's a lifetime commitment. So you just have to think and just reach out or reach in. There's always something there. And I just appreciate your time and let me express that.
I appreciate you doing it. So here's the really hard question. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do next? Lieutenant Colonel retired is going to do.
I got to find a job. I got 3 kids at home. So I got 10 years to work. I don't care. It just has to make money. I don't want to, supply is fun. I want to, a job that is just communicating with people. I like to talk to people. I like to be out there. I'm trying to stay away from DOD, but I'll do that if I can. Just management, supply chain logistics, just something that can get me out every day and enjoying life.
Awesome. Very cool.
I haven't found it yet.
You haven't done it at all? Not even a little bit?
I haven't found it yet. I'm still looking. I have time.
You do. So, well, I can't tell you how fun this has been. I feel like I've had permagrin for the last whatever long we've been talking, because you just had me laughing and smiling. And I'm just like, okay, let her go.
So, yeah. I'm out there sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, I'm retired now, so I can say what I think.
Cool.
So,
All right, I'm going to wrap this up again. Thanks, Tara, Lieutenant Colonel, retired. Going to go find hopefully a job that's going to make her enjoy her life instead of whatever it is you want to call it before that. I guess I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but this has been, challenging.
Challenging.
This has been an amazing rant, and I think I'm going to give you the #1 slot for the best rant, rattle, and roller so far.
Yay! Thank you.
All right, again, this is Veterans Rant, Rattle, and Roll. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, share the videos, get the stories out there. We're hoping that these stories from people like Tara can help other veterans stop this 22. We want you to keep on being with us, keep on serving with us. I, like Tara, have gotten extremely emotional over phone calls. Don't check out. Keep fighting the fight because we miss you. We love serving with you. And if we didn't even know you wore the uniform, as far as we're concerned, you're still a top-rated human being. For myself and Lieutenant Colonel Tara, this is Veteran Rants, Rattle, and Roll signing off.